Chrono Trigger is an amazing game. One of the best even. And it's for that reason that I have such a hard time figuring out how I should start this video. I know I'm not going to be the best when it comes to explain why Chrono Trigger is so good. So instead I'm just going to talk about why Chrono Trigger is so enjoyable to me. And I think it's got a lot to do with perspective. Every game has good and bad qualities to it. Sometimes the worst games can have the highest positives and the best games can have some of the worst negatives. Right off the top of my head, I can think about all the enjoyable moments I've had playing Sonic 06, and that game is notoriously horrible. And despite how much I think Final Fantasy VIII is the best PS1 Final Fantasy, it doesn't change the fact that that game has a lot of problems. But the reason that I think Chrono Trigger does such a good job is because games, and anything for that matter, is only as good as the place in life that you experience it. My first experience with Chrono Trigger was just to get through my phase of playing every JRPG I could get my hands on. And when I played it for the first time, I never finished it. It just didn't really click with me properly. But recently I went back to it, and it was just as an experiment. I needed to know if I wasn't enjoying games because they aren't as good as the ones I played when I was a kid, or if the problem was me. So, time for a bit of story time. I only ever finished Chrono Trigger recently, and I actually played Chrono Cross first. You see, I was playing this little JRPG that's getting a bit more popular recently, and that's the Trails franchise. Specifically, the one I was playing was Trails in the Sky, and to put it quite simply, I don't really like this game. My brother really likes this franchise, and so he got it for me and I gave it a shot, but ever since I finished it, I've only had bad things to say about it. Be it the gameplay being unfinished or its story being very slow, I always had something about it that I just didn't really like. And it just felt wrong. I mean, he really likes this franchise, so clearly there's something about it that's gotta be good, but I just didn't really see anything. It made me wonder if maybe the problem was that I'm just not enjoying games as much anymore. I mean, I made an entire video about Shin Megami Tensei 5, and I ended that video by saying that I didn't really like it too much, at least at the end. And so I had to do an experiment. I figured I knew too much about Chrono Trigger, so I started with Chrono Cross, which I had been eyeing for a while, and I only didn't play because of what I had heard about the game. But how bad could it be? It's a game made by Square in the time where they were at their peak, and it's a sequel to one of the most notoriously good JRPGs ever. Worst case scenario, the game's just average. So I tried it out. I have enough to say about Chrono Cross that it could be its own video, and I'm sure I'll make one right after this one. But all that really matters for this video is that I just felt really disappointed by the game. I didn't think it was horrible, definitely not as bad as what I had heard the game was, but I didn't feel like it was as good as the material they had in the game would make you believe. I did enjoy playing the game, but it just made me really disappointed. But that wasn't enough. After all, in order to get an experiment to be done properly, you've got to do it multiple times. At least 3, they say, but I figured 2 would be enough. So I tried Chrono Trigger, and, well, I'm making a video here, aren't I? So you must know the answer. Chrono Trigger is an amazing game. I probably don't have to tell you that, but it's definitely true. It's so good, in fact, that this drawing that you're seeing me do in the background is actually the first piece of real fan art that I've ever done for anything. I did make that thumbnail for SMT5, but I just traced over stuff for that. This is actually something that I've made for original, and it's real fan art, and I've never done that before. And I am only doing it because I actually think Chrono Trigger is worth it. Media is only as good as the point in time where you experience them. And I think what makes Chrono Trigger so good is just that you can experience Chrono Trigger at basically any point in your life and find something to really enjoy about it. I said before that games are all about perspective, and I think that's true. And the perspective I had going into Chrono Trigger was that the game would probably be objectively good and well done, but it wouldn't change anything. Games just aren't as good for me anymore. I'm into different types of games, or not into them at all. But now that I'm done with Chrono Trigger, I just can't help but want to find something else. Find the next thing, and I don't know that I will. Not because Chrono Trigger is too good, but because I'm just not at a point in life where I can experience these games fresh again. Now with the internet, there's so many ways to get reviews on the games, or let's plays on games, and games take so long to come out because they're so high budget that you don't ever get to experience a game one after another like you did when you were a kid. I love Final Fantasy VIII, but no matter how much I love that game, it will never be as good as the first time that I played it. I can play the game 1,000 times, but it just won't be the same. And I think that's why Chrono Trigger was so good for me. It was something fresh that was really good. If nowadays I could play something that's fresh, but with so many leaks and reviews and how expensive they are, I'm incentivized to watch the reviews before I play the game, that I just can't experience something that's truly fresh. At the time of recording this video, the demo for Metaphor ReFantasio came out, and I tried it out. And yeah, the game was good, I guess, but I decided, despite originally planning to make a video on it, that I just wasn't going to bother. And that's because the full game is gonna be $70 and $100 if I'm going to get the definitive edition. It's completely ridiculous. I can get Chrono Trigger on Steam or emulate the game and get an experience that's going to be just as, if not more enjoyable, for significantly cheaper. And I think the price definitely affects your enjoyment of the game. If you increase the price, it's going to be expected more of the experience. It continues to go back to perspective. If you could tally up your enjoyment of something and say you enjoyed it 8 out of 10 and you spent $30 on it, you'd feel pretty good. But if you enjoy something 8 out of 10 and spent $70 on it, you're gonna feel a lot worse, like your money was wasted. Now, I don't want to derail this too much to get into talking about inflation, so I'm gonna go back to talking about Chrono Trigger. So I said I would do a review of Chrono Trigger, but I think I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. A lot of the times when people review games or movies, they'll talk about what's great about it. And only with satire videos like Everything Wrong With will you actually hear people talking about the stuff that isn't so good. And I think talking about it is actually more valuable than talking about what the game does right. Oftentimes, the least looked at aspect has the most to say. Going back to my example from before, Sonic 06 is so bad not because it has a lot of problems. Look at a game like Skyrim. It has 1,000 issues. But people still love that game and play it all the time because it also has positives. Sonic 06 just doesn't really have many positives. And that's why it's so bad. So, this is what I think is wrong with Chrono Trigger. So the game begins, and you have a festival to go to. You're meeting your friend Luca. The game doesn't really tell you how you're actually supposed to meet Luca, and potentially you could get lost here and spend a lot of time at a fair not doing anything. I did stuff, so my time was spent actually playing the game, but I could potentially see someone having issue with this, so here it is. As a quick nitpick, I guess you can eat the guy's food without it getting a prompt asking if you want to eat it. I guess. The game gives you two characters who specialize in water instead of giving you another element. Okay, this doesn't really have any gameplay effect on it, and they could have fixed it by just putting a new symbol instead of having two water droplets. Again, not really a big deal, but we're going through everything here, so here it is. Alright, this one is actually a big deal, but it's also not, and I'll explain that later. So, the time travel. The game acknowledges a grandfather paradox, where they have to save the queen, or Marle will disappear. Okay, I get it. They aren't saving the queen because they think they have her. But the problem is that if Marle disappears, then they'd go back to search for the queen. And it's a grandfather paradox. This sort of logic can apply to everything in Chrono Trigger. You know, the forest should be fixed in the present because Robo should have been there in the past because us from the future would have put him there. I know it's a little bit confusing and with the jargon, but whatever. This isn't actually a big deal, and I'll explain when I talk about the positives of Chrono Trigger, but like I said, we're going through everything. The last nitpick I can think of is that characters who aren't being used in the active party don't gain tech points. But that's it. That's not many problems. And I think that's what makes Chrono Trigger so good from a technical standpoint. The game just doesn't have many problems. So, not having many problems is only useful if what's good is good, so let's go there. So before I mention the time travel paradox that the game creates and how it shouldn't function, the issue with this is that there's both an actual explanation with the rules of the universe that they just don't tell you is the way it works, and the fact that the game just doesn't have to explain this anyway. So all that really matters is that for the characters, time is working one way for them, and it's working normal for everyone else. So, because they can act linearly, they can change the future. It's never told to us outright, but it's the way that everything's been working, and it's kind of implied. But does it really matter? All that actually matters is that the future can be changed. It shouldn't matter why, all it matters is that it can. So focusing on it as an issue isn't really a big deal. Moving on to the characters, I'm going to start with Chrono. He doesn't have much to say, being a silent protagonist, but before I played Chrono Trigger, I had heard that he was just Goku from Dragon Ball. And I don't really see how. Sure, he's got the hair for it, but no. At best, he's the Goku who came out of the time chamber and told Vegeta that he was weak, but I just don't see it. Chrono is super unbelievably confident. I mean, look at that smirk. You don't smirk like that unless you have it 100% in your mind that you're gonna win. I mean, when he gave Frog the Masamune and he hit that grin, there was zero doubt in his mind that he would beat the ever-loving crap out of Magus. And sure, he can be a bit of a goody two-shoes, like when he goes to save Marl, who he had just met 30 seconds ago, but I think that he just went back in time to save her, because there was zero doubt in his mind that he would just mess everyone up. It's just a little bit of headcanon. I don't have any confirmation that Chrono is this unbelievably confident, but that's just the way that the character came off to me. Despite Marl serving as a sort of second protagonist, I don't actually have very much to say about her. She was just kind of a tomboy anime girl, and that's about it. I'm actually much more interested in the other characters, and the one I'm going to talk about now is Luca. I've seen a lot of praise go towards Hermione from Harry Potter because she can just be Harry's friend and there doesn't have any love going on here. And I really admire that about Luca as well. She never really feels like a second love interest for Chrono as much as she just feels like Chrono's best friend. And that's really nice. Frog goes on a textbook hero's journey, and that's always really nice. The way he kind of starts in the middle of his journey when we meet him at his low point and then taken to his high is also really nice. And it's nice to see someone go through this who isn't the protagonist. Oftentimes, the hero's journey is given to the protagonist and it makes the story kind of predictable. Watching a side character go through it is a nice change of pace. But despite all the characters being pretty well written, I think the one that I'm most impressed with is actually Robo. He kind of feels like the most human character, despite, as much as he would like to tell you, having no emotions. He definitely does have emotions. The way he tells us to not destroy his robot brethren before we tear them to shreds while he's not looking is an amazing scene, and it's one of his first. He's got plenty of great moments after that as well, like with his robot girlfriend, or where he's telling Luca that she's been holding back these memories for a long time and that saving her mom's legs is something that she's wanted to do but never felt like she should tell her party to do it because it just wasn't important enough to the mission. And I think we all know the characters well enough that if Luca had told them, they would have helped her. But I think this moment of just Luca getting to do something right that she's wanted to do for a long time, and Robo being there to console her despite telling us that he has no emotions, is just a really nice scene. Isla may not have much to her besides Cave Woman, but Magus does, and I would talk about him, but I'll save that for the Chrono Cross video since there's a lot more to say about him with that involved, and I'd just retread territory. All that needs to really be said is that Magus is one of the few characters who's actually improved by Chrono Cross. In Trigger, he's fine, I guess. He's evil but not. But in Chrono Cross, there's a lot more to him, and, well, he's a good character, I guess. This is where I'm supposed to ramble about why the ATB system from Final Fantasy is so good, and how the characters moving around the battle screen is nice, and the enemies moving is nice, and it makes an actual reason to have wait versus active battles besides I'm bad at the game, which I am. But if I was talking about all the reasons why the gameplay was fun, I'd be here for another half an hour, so I'm just gonna skip it. Chrono Trigger is one of the few games that time travel doesn't feel super convoluted. Most of the time, characters will do time travel and then it doesn't make sense. I'm looking at you, Dragon Ball. You changed the rules like 30 times. But in Chrono Trigger, they keep it pretty simple. Just, we have to go back in time to change something in the future, and then it happens. It doesn't try very hard to make it super complicated, which is appreciated. This further goes on to the story itself, which, yeah, is really good. It answers every single question you want to answer while leaving just enough unanswered to potentially have a sequel, which we did get, but it didn't really answer many of the questions. And I think I'm going to stop this little review section here because the video is almost over and I don't want to end it like this. Chrono Trigger is a really important game to me, I think, because it just changed my perspective on games in general and kind of renewed a sort of life within me as far as how I feel about games. And I think that's really impressive. If you're going through a slump with whatever it is that you're enjoying, I would suggest you just go out and experience something new. It might change your perspective. Did for me, it just might for you too. I know I just rambled about nothing for half an hour, but it's time for my mandatory shilling session, so subscribe. Come watch me play games live every Tuesday and Thursday, link in the description. And I'll probably be playing a Nuzlocke of Chrono Cross. How does that sound? Maybe I'll actually come out with that Devil Summoner video, or maybe I won't. We'll see. The Chrono Cross video will come though. Leave a comment if you want to see something. It can be anything, I'll do it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.